Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Relating to DevSecOps, where we explore the development, security, and operational issues of today so that we can solve real-world problems with the people that face them. I'm your host, Ken Toller, and I'm joined by my co-host, Michael McCabe. Mike, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Welcome back to you as well. It's been a little while.
It's
Took a
been
little
so
hiatus.
long.
Yeah.
Too long. It's busy. It's busy in December, man.
Yes, it is. It's also
It's not
only
even
November,
December.
but yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure
Hey,
November or December will be busy too.
I feel like, Halloween is over. It's just the pumpkins are, I don't know what the weather is anymore. The pumpkins are still out. I don't know what's going on anymore, man.
Have you left your house in the last 2 weeks?
In the last 2 weeks, yes. Yeah. I've been out there.
Okay.
It's actually raining, so
All right.
I felt some raindrops today.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, it's been good. How about yourself?
Yeah.
Any security conferences, any travel, anything fun, learning anything new?
Always learning, but no conferences yet. Going to reInvent, of course. So that'll be a joy.
Of course.
5 days of Vegas. Nothing better.
I hear people are worried that the content might be too generative AI driven.
Yes, I think that's been a concern with the past couple of years, but sounds like there's some other stuff getting released that's not just Gen AI. So I think they picked up on the memo that people are tired of it.
Great, good. Well, not tired of it, just need something new.
Yes.
All right. Well, look, today we are jumping into something that maybe security leaders have faced. Mike and I certainly face this every single day, and that is security budgets and the finance constraints around security, both as a security practitioner and on the consulting side, facing those budgets and trying to make the most out of what we have. And so I think this has been particularly relevant, especially as we go into the end of the year. And if you're in the feast and famine industry of security, or whether you are a customer or a software practitioner, software engineer company, and you're trying to leverage your budget for security in some way, I thought it'd be interesting to talk through some of the challenges, trials and tribulations around security budgets, how they're measured, how they're seen, and compare those to just like what folks generally expect out of a security organization within a company overall, because I think this is something that kind of surprised me when I first faced it. I think as a security practitioner, you're just like, we can't do it with this budget, or you want X and we're trying to deliver it with, chopsticks and string. And so I just wanted to shed some light on how that's viewed, get some conversations going with Mike and myself around things that we do to combat that on both sides of the conversation. So, Mike, any initial thoughts there as we break open this touchy topic around money?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good topic because it's definitely relevant for the past few years. I mean, I think security budgets have been probably not too down, but at least flat and not growing as much as I'm sure a lot of security leaders and CISOs would like. And it's not like anything got cheaper. Security tooling and quality security folks haven't gotten any cheaper, so it's been a struggle for folks. I think it's definitely relevant. I mean, I think it's there's no one solution for all of it, but I mean, I think I was having this discussion this would be another good topic for a different podcast episode, but this discussion on like what makes a good CISO, and so what actually helps the CISO make changes and reduce risk company. And I was saying that it's only like 50% actual security. 50% of what they should be doing is just integrating security with what's already going on and improving those processes, versus just like, hey, here's a new huge platform that's $1 million a year, let's throw this into everything and start changing the way we do stuff and get alerts and things like that. Like, I feel like my point could be summarized. There are companies out there that have really good IT, cloud, DevOps operations, application development operations, that are more secure with less security budget than there are huge companies with huge security budgets but have terrible IT operations. So I think if if you're a scrappy director of security or CISO, whatever it is, and you're working with a minimal budget, what are the ways you can use that budget to influence the IT operations, or even maybe try to co-opt some of the IT operations budget to fix some of those big issues that they have? Things like a single sign-on provider might be helpful. Single sources of data, moving to one location for data versus having like 15 different SaaS products and cloud providers, things like that. Like, try to find the IT operations avenues that aren't necessarily security spend, but just things that will improve your process across the board that'll also give you more security. That's where my head goes first. But
Yeah. Now I have a couple of things that would be great to dig into there, but I had a question for you. Do you think that is, you mentioned that you have some of the smaller, scrappier teams, and they sometimes have much better security postures than these large enterprises. Do you think that is a question of scaling the kind of scrappy security solution to an enterprise level? Or do you think that what do you think drives that? Are you saying that you think that enterprise is doing it wrong, that they're spending too much money on tools? Or do you think that it's because these solutions that are implemented successfully on a small scale for cheap aren't scalable to the enterprise?
I mean, that's a good question. I think the answer to the question for me is leadership. It's the leaders who understand the issues, and understand what actually drives the solutions, and they push that down to their entire organization. I remember doing work for a relatively small utility, and I was going into it and thinking like, oh, this place is going to be a mess. It's not a small town utility, and they don't have a dedicated security team. But I went in there, and they're like, they train every junior developer up on security. They train them how to use the patterns that are approved. They like institutionalize that security is very important. And I've worked at companies that have 500-600 security people, and I'm pinging production from my laptop sitting in the office. So it's like, yeah, to your point, there's somewhat of it's harder to scale security. But I think the thing is, and again, we're getting on a different podcast topic, as we always do. But I think the thing is, if CISOs are constantly obsessed with buying and integrating the next tool to solve a problem without actually solving the underlying IT issues, which I feel like, again, 50, 60, 70% of security is almost just like, if you did IT in a very efficient, well-managed way, you'd have way less security issues. But if they focused more there, then like just slap another tool on top of it, we'd probably be in a lot better place. But that's my hot take for the day.
No, I appreciate that. And it's making me think, because I do agree with you. I think that there's ways that you can, in a smaller organization, be very creative and innovative in how you handle security issues. And there's a couple of things that you said that I'm going to try to tie together succinctly that I've faced that I would love your opinion on here. And it's basically that when you have small organizations and you implement these solutions, you can see the success very quickly because of a couple of things. One, like, it's easier to get that adoption between departments. So the DevSecOps, our collaborative aspect of DevSecOps is a lot easier in a smaller organization, because we're able to, we feel like a small family unit. But then as that grows and the numbers get bigger and the people are more, and you get like above 1,000, or above 2,000 people, even something as seemingly simple as identity, where you could previously like look at a page of 20 people or 30 people, becomes this really granular, complex thing that you need to handle. And so now you need to customize, or the complexity grows. And it's the same thing we see in cloud, right? You go from managing maybe like a single AWS account to thousands of accounts. And the budget scales with that, and the ability to manage that scales with that. And I don't think that I think it's almost exponential in how much that costs to bring it back to budget. And the people that are managing that maybe were these senior people that you've hired initially to be the jack of all trades or the Jill of all trades and do all of these things and be innovative, that talent set gets diluted. So you're facing different problems in larger organizations with bigger budgets. And that is when you need to start to buy these really expensive tools, or maybe not need to, but you're tempted to buy these really expensive tools. And I think that's where the budget starts to go. All of this is to say that this conversation was really driven for me after reading a white paper around security budgets for 2023 into 2024 and recognizing that the security budgets that are being published in these reports, the average security budget, or even maybe the suggested security budgets across industries, is something like 0.7% of revenue. So that seems like such a small number. And I was thinking about, when you have 70 AWS accounts and you are running EDR for large organizations and you have all of these different things, that this can be a really small, like you can get through this budget so quickly and not even meet one facet of like a NIST CSF. So how do we combat that as a security organization? What are the techniques that we can use to face that? Because what security is going to say is we need more money to buy more things so that we can support the organization within this framework, which has been, a strategy that I've used in the past. And realizing this, you're like, there's no way you're going to get that, because in order to make that happen, to achieve this level 3, you're going to have to spend much more than what is the industry average. And what is the business owner going to do, or what is the executive team going to go? What do other people in the industry spend on this? And they're going to come to you and say, you have to do it on this budget. And I think that's where a lot of security folks get frustrated. And so to your point about this, the CISO or CISO, that's what they are fighting with that other 50%. So all that said, what do you think? Like, what do we do? Right? It seems like the impossible dream.
Yeah. I think, security is, we don't really own anything. You might own the box that runs Nessus, you might own Wiz, you might own, whatever security tooling, maybe you own a standard, but that might fall under council, something like that. Security doesn't like own the business. They don't run the servers for the most part. There's probably some crazy company out there that's like, yeah, security runs our servers, but for the most part, you don't own anything. So your job is to influence people to do things the right way, either influence directly with things like, policies, standards that have to be adhered to and are audited, or influence in the way of like, hey, this is an easier way, more secure way of doing it, will reduce our risk, which, can be quantifiable or quantifiable, but, qualitative or quantifiable, saying the same thing. But, I think there's a few different ways you influence people, but that's the way you go about it. So it's not like you want to solve a problem with the tool and that's why you spend money on it. But I don't think that is 90% of your security is coming from that tool you buy to solve that problem. Now, if I ever create a SaaS product and I'm selling it, I'm going to say the exact opposite. I'm going to, disavow I ever said anything like these. But my point is, I think you should hire smart, very technical people who understand how to solve your issues. If that's an identity issue, if that's if that's an AD issue, if that's a Windows box patching issue, if that's an EDR issue, hire the right people to do those things. Give them space to run and build solutions and own solutions for those things, and then tightly integrate that with IT. Spend your money on good people versus just buying the solution, because you're either going to buy a platform that does everything poorly, or you're going to buy a very specific niche thing that does one thing well, and you've just ignored 90% of the rest of your issues. So that's where my mindset is at. If I ran a security team, I think that's where I'd focus. I'm a big fan of open source. I'm a big fan of free, but I'd spend the money on good people who can take whatever the tooling is and make it work for your organization. That's my pie in the sky idea. But what are your thoughts? I see your
No, I mean,
brain.
you're
Your
making me
brain.
think, to put it bluntly, make your security budget as small as possible. I think, you know, in the past, I've seen security leaders fight for security budget. And it's almost like reframe that and say, and try to eliminate the category of security from the things you're asking for. And you mentioned it earlier in the podcast, right? Like your single sign-on. That's not a security tool, but it does have a security function. And so you're going to be a big part of identity. We talk about identity governance. We talk about DLP. We talk about all of these things. Make them a part of the data budget, a part of the IT budget, a part of whatever other budget you can, so that you can make your number as small as possible, so that when you ask for tools that are specific to security, you are asking for things that can only be attached to a security category. Yeah. That's really messed up, but I mean, I'm like talking to myself at this point, but I think that's how it's got to be. I mean, that's the battle we're fighting, right? Is what's easier to say, hey, my number is too small, so I need more, or to say, hey, like, we've taken control over all these things. These are security functions, and to really fight for the security aspect of things, like showcasing. So your big wins, your progression should be around the frameworks, the posture, how far your security team is coming along. But your budget, when you're having that budget conversation and you're talking about the fraction of a budget, keep in mind that you're fighting that industry standard number. And so you want to showcase that it's as small as possible when you're having that conversation at the executive level or at the business level.
Yeah, I mean, I think the mindset, and I'm sorry to Gartner, but I think the mindset is just like increase budgets, buy more solutions. Those will solve our problems. But I mean, I know you've told the story in a couple of talks that we've done, but about one of the companies you worked with implementing Vault, which it is for security, but it was solving more than just a security problem, moving away from some like old archaic secrets management tool to a much more modern, much easier to use API driven tool. It's like you got all these security benefits from it for sure, but also it made developers' lives way easier. It's the same thing as single sign-on. Like you don't. It is a huge security win, but who wants to type in their password 15 times a day? You know, you get tired typing password one over and over again. I do all the time. So
yeah, so you need to collaborate. So this goes back to the enablement side, right? Which is, in order to get as much budget as possible, you need to you have to have those conversations with the other business units that do have larger budgets than security, so that you can enable them with something that is a good has good security capabilities. I've actually, not until today, thought of potentially DLP as coming out of a data budget.
Well, how would you pull that off?
It has data in the name.
It's so simple. Why did no one think of this yet?
Yeah, it's data loss prevention,
Yeah.
So it has data, and it should be a part of data's budget.
Yeah, because you don't want to lose the data.
Right.
They wouldn't have a job if the data folks didn't have data.
You need to prevent that. Yeah. You also talked about open source tooling. Okay, so this is interesting, because I was talking to somebody about this for vulnerability management, right? In playing with vulnerability management, they have other things going on in the security budget, and they're like, we definitely need vulnerability management and network scanner, but we can't afford, like, we're not satisfied with Nessus. We can't afford, Rapid7 or Chronicle, or, I don't even know if Chronicle is doing vuln management, but I know, like, they can't afford the bigger names, but they want those features. And so they're looking at things like Greenbone and Flan and these other sort of open source vulnerability management tools. Back to that, again, smaller organization probably solves that, right? Easy to implement. Go. Do you think those solutions scale?
I mean,
And
I
let's just
think,
focus on vuln management, right? As like as a thing.
I mean, Nessa scales obviously because it's the best solution out there. Um,
But we're talking about free.
no,
So
I
right,
know.
can't afford Nessus.
All right,
Even
Nessus with a
Nessus is too
cracked
expensive.
license off of the Pirate Bay. That's free. It scales. Okay, don't sue me, Tenable. Um, no, I mean, does it scale? I think the thing is like the solutions that get sold. I think of it as kind of like the 80-20 principle. Like you're getting most of the value out of something out of a small set of findings from any of these tools that you'll probably get an equal amount of coverage out of an open source tool. Like if you have Eternal Blue running in your internal network, probably both are going to find it. If you have some like random finding that an open source tool is not going to find, but Nessus did find, yeah, maybe you lost out on that. But like for 80% of the value you're going to get from a commercial tool, you'll probably get from a lot of open source tools. I think about this in static analysis a lot too. It's like I can pay for a super heavy license for something, but I'll probably find the big issues I want to find in a code base probably with like free semgrep. Now, there's going to be some
Yeah.
some that you're not going to find, and it depends on the language. But like the more you pay doesn't mean always the more value you get. And I think the thing is more findings doesn't equal more value.
So ignore the findings for a second. Let's say that you have parity in findings. So you have your semgrep free, and that's not we're already into SAST and off vuln management. But
I
I
think of it
think
all as bull
yeah,
management, but
I get you. Um, the is it really about the findings when you're talking about enterprise and scale? Like, I almost feel like you're paying for the polish because you need to be faster to report delivery or metrics or integrations or alerts. And so when you have an open source tool like SemGrep free, what are you getting when you're paying for SemGrep? You're getting additional rule sets, sure, but then you're also getting a dashboard and you're getting metrics and you're getting API keys and you're getting these other things that work with your tooling. And I think that's what you're paying for at the enterprise level and why these things get so expensive, because they know, hey, if we get you on the tool when you're just, you know, moving the needle, when it starts to become untenable, you start to need other things. You need to like start to tie these things together, and you're paying for that polish. So in terms of scaling, like how do you do that with open source tooling that doesn't have that? Or is there an open source tool that you know of that has the same level of polish as like an enterprise tool?
no, I mean I agree with you. Like you pay for the nice UI and the dashboard and the like automation and it being, somewhat easy one click. I think the funny life cycle for companies is like say you're a small company, like we don't have budget, we're just going to build this on our own. All right, we take
Mm-hmm.
some open source tools, we build it up, it works well enough, and then eventually you're like, all right, we have budget, let's just pay someone to build this for us. Then you get really big and you're like, wait, this does not work for us because this is a one size fits none solution. We got to build it ourselves now. And I saw this with one of our clients when it came to um, basically cloud monitoring. Was like they bought the big name. This was before, not Wiz, but they before Wiz got big. The big name, and they're like, oh, this is great. It's one dashboard to rule them all. Like we have all of our insight. And they scaled up to thousands of accounts, and they're like, oh, well, this doesn't really work for us anymore. We have to build it ourselves. So I feel like there's that kind of life cycle where, depending on how much you scale, for some companies you're never going to be that big, but you're going to grow past most of what these tools build for. So like, yeah, if you're in the sweet spot of like, yeah, this automates things for me, it gives me the insight I need, perfect. Then like, yeah, you're in the sweet spot. If you start scaling up to really big, if you're, thousands of cloud accounts or thousands of apps and you're trying to handle all these findings, like you're always going to hit those edge cases with those tools again. Then you're back to the point of like, why don't I just build this instead of paying for their engineers to build it for me. So I think that's the kind of funny life cycle is there's plenty of people who are in the first bucket that it's like, it's just better for us just to build this, own it end to end completely. We'll get the value out of it that we need. It's not going to be perfect. You're not going to have the fancy dashboard, but it gives us the data we need.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I agree or disagree there because
You got to pick one.
yeah, I don't know. I think I kind of disagree because um the building internally, I think is only feasible if you're willing to maintain it. So can you think about maintenance of the things that you're building at the beginning? Or are you trialing a capability? Because I will I'll give you an example. So early in incident response, one of the things that I had built for an organization was like this Slack bot that you can type into the Slack channel and it'll report the issue. One of the things I was facing is like, okay, well, the reason that I'm building this is because I had to customize the integration because the alerting tools that we had weren't integrating with the Slack bots that were available. So, sending a ticket to Notion was one of the things that we needed to do. And like PagerDuty didn't do this, and Option didn't do this. So it was like, okay, well, we need to build this Slack bot from scratch so that we can, call the Notion API and not use something weird like Zapier or whatever to make this connection. But then it was like, okay, I have to maintain this now, right? And it's just, so I've put this together. Everyone's like, oh, this is great. And then you go, okay, well, now I have to update the libraries and I have to be on top of this. And so you've just given yourself more work because you've created this, I won't call it innovative, but you've created this custom solution and now you need to maintain it. So and that's just like on a small scale. So you think about creating these tools internally and then not having the foresight to be like, okay, we need to maintain this. What is the development cost to maintain this over time? Understanding that most organizations already have issues with dependency management and SBOM and all these things, again, is the cost worth it to pay for the tool or to leverage someone else's budget to pay for the tool?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a one size fits all, answer there. I mean, I think it's probably a case by case basis. Like, is it cheaper to just buy Nessus and spin it up and throw it in every network you need to run scans once a month to satisfy your PCI auditors or SOC 2, whatever it is? Maybe.
As part of the networking budget.
Yes, because the policy says secure networks. I mean, potentially it is, but I think it depends on what problem you're trying to solve and what you're focused on. Like I think different teams are good at different things. I don't think I'd suggest anyone go out and build their own Okta and like start integrating everything with their custom Okta or do their own Duo, or YubiKey type thing for MFA. Like, buy the right solutions when it makes sense. But I think the issue, you see this push and pull in the dev community too, of like, either build internally or just buy. And there's different organizations that have different appetites. Some just want to build everything internally because they don't trust other people. Some people want to just buy and they don't want to own things. I think the same thing happens in security, where these days the philosophy is just buy whatever it is. And we get solutions that aren't great fits for what they're trying to do. And they don't start with build a lot of times. So I don't know. I think it's a debate. Different places are different. I'm not going to say there's one right answer. I think the thing is, if you're limited on budget, hire good people who can either help you build cheaper solutions or at least make the most of what you can buy with your tiny budget.
Different budgets, man.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Have your data people pay for DLP.
Yeah, different budgets. I mean, I'm just saying, like, you're talking about people versus tooling.
Yes, that is true.
We're coming up on time. I do want to ask one more question, and that is, considering all the things we talked about, shifting budget targets, like, or trying to put security things into other people's budgets. What are the top 3 things you think a security team should spend security budget on And I think you gave us one as people, good people.
My answer would probably be identity and then logging, monitoring, and alerting. So pushing everything through a single sign-on, definitely like cloud identity, figuring out how to do that in a more streamlined way, and then having centralized logging for everything, some kind of monitoring on it, and some alerting that someone's paying attention to, even if it's just Ken with PagerDuty at 3 a.m.
Do you think when you say monitoring and alerting, are you talking about like a SIM from the security budget?
It could be.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because I'm trying to think of what are the security things that we need that we should spend budget on, given that we have like let's say, I mean, we're the thinnest budget in the organization right now, right? Let's say that that's the case. Like, what are the things that we have to buy? And you say logging and monitoring. I'm like, well, that's apps need logging, network needs logging. Yeah. Is it the aggregator? Is it, are we the Splunk budget? Are we, where is that budget actually going? So of the things that you've mentioned, people, logging and monitoring, I'd almost say is usually in the SRE or the DevOps or IT budget. So is it the SIM? Like, would you purchase a SIM over another security function or capability?
I'm going to put on my consultant hat again and say the answer to that is not yes or no. It depends on what can you operationalize better. If you have a team who's like amazing at Elk and they can help you build out Elk dashboards and alerts and things like that integrate with all of your alerting systems, go that route versus buying Splunk and spending 6 months customizing it and building out all your alerts that way and maintaining the infrastructure, or paying millions in Splunk professional services to do it. So I think it's like, I think you pick and choose what you're good at and what your internal teams are good at doing and ride on their coattails a little bit to try to operationalize those things. But I mean, I think to your point is like a lot of what we do in security is not security specific. I think right. That's like, we talked about this before. Like, is a security person just a security person? Or are they just someone who works alongside IT, improving IT in some way? It's like, people think of it, it's like its own thing, but we are just kind of a succubus on the on the IT org. But the same thing is true for what we're trying to do. Like, SemGrep is a tool to find patterns in code. So are linters and other things like that. So, I mean, yeah, we'll get into the whole minutia of it. But
I want your security spend. I want the, like, tell me what you think. I'm thinking myself, like, as an example, I'll put one out there, and then you have to give me one.
Okay.
None of this, it depends. But mine would say, I would say that you should spend money on static analysis as one.
Okay. This is going to be out of the ordinary. I would say some type of SOC, managed SOC. And I'm someone who does not like the current like ecosystem for managed SOC, but something that you're piping all of your logs to, and some group of people who are monitoring them and will alert on them. I think that is super important early on.
No, I can agree with that. Yeah, I would say, going off of that, I agree. So I think static analysis, because when you're scaling, I think static analysis is hard open source. SOC, I agree. And maybe putting pressure on myself here.
Is this our Christmas wish list?
Yeah, I mean, because SOC is good. And probably like assessments, like good assessments.
Yeah.
That second pair of eyes, good assessments, and the SOC and the static analysis. I think most other things you'll be able to get into other budgets based on our strategy here. And I think that the most expensive thing that you're going to get pushed on that I don't know if I 100% agree with is like the CNAP. But I think that a lot of that you can probably, it's going to be harder, but you could usually get out of your cloud provider, or, maybe finagle your way into some open source or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. Any other ones? I know we're a little bit over, so I'll give you one final shot for a tool, and then we'll end it.
No, I mean, I don't want to be self-serving and say I agree on the assessment side, but it is nice to have a second set of eyes say where your risks are. I think that's always helpful. I mean, yeah, if we already have identity covered, I think we have the list pretty well covered. So force someone else to pay for Okta.
Yeah, exactly. There you have it, folks. That's our conversation on budgeting.
We solved everything.
Well, I learned something today, or at least I felt good about, at least, bouncing some ideas off of you. Well, look, thanks for everyone for joining us. Mike, any final words?
No, I want some socks for Christmas.
All right. More, yeah. Socks.
Yes.
All right, cool. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.